Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to these inaugural embassy dialogues in the lead-up of the 2026 Soccer World Cup in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. It will start next June. This is an exciting momentum for the Atlantic Council as we launch a new Power of Sports program, a sports diplomacy program dedicated to advancing sports as a tool for diplomacy, for business, and for development. For a think tank like us, focused on international relations for 65 years now, sports cannot be ignored anymore as a tool for diplomatic influence, and also an investment sector with a huge impact. The popularity of champions, their powerful voice, including in diplomacy and politics, the rising economic sector, the fastest actually, everything leads to a recognition of sports diplomacy beyond the field. And at a time when traditional diplomacy often faces limits, sports continue to open doors and create shared experiences. So to explore this, we are launching this exciting series inspired by our executive vice chair, Adrienne Arsht, the Power of Sports Embassy Dialogues, featuring ambassadors of countries qualified for the summer's competition, the World Cup next June. So I'm pleased to start the program today with two sports countries we all love thanks to their incredible champions and beyond, both qualified for the Soccer World Cup. France, I had the pleasure to serve there as a Minister of Sports a few years ago, represented today by His Excellency Laurent Billy. Welcome, Ambassador. And the wonderful winner of the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations, represented here by His Excellency Ibrahima Touré, Ambassador of Côte d'Ivoire. Welcome, Ambassador. So it's not a match, it is a friendly dialogue between two countries with a long-standing partnership, but their players will do the best to win the World Cup. So ambassadors, welcome to the Atlantic Council, and I'm gratefully accepted to join us today to speak about the sports policies of France and Côte d'Ivoire. So my first question will be for both of you. The 2026 FIFA World Cup will be the largest tournament history, featuring a record of 48 teams and 104 matches across 16 host cities in the three Americas, and will capture global attention. So how do you see your national, just a question about the field before we leave the field, how do you see your national teams evolve in this competition? What are the reasons we should think that France will win the World Cup? Ambassador Billy.
I was sure that you will start by the elephants. Les éléphants, as we say, because as you know, English is just a French that is badly pronounced. So les éléphants, the elephants, yeah. They have been very successful. So I wish Côte d'Ivoire the best. For us, I think we have been present in the World Cup final for the last, qualified for 4 of the last World Cup since 1998, and we have been investing a lot on talents, on formation, and so we have managed to make sure that at each time that one gigantic figure is leaving, a new one is arriving. In many places of the world, when you say that you are French, depending on well, as you can see, I'm not that young, but I remember the first time it was Platini, then Tigana, then Zidane, now it's Mbappé. But we have this generation of players that really embodied the spirit and the formation, training of the French team. So I'm confident.
Confident France will win. And can Côte d'Ivoire challenge France and maybe win this World Cup? Why we should think Côte d'Ivoire, after the Africa Continental Cup of Nations, would win the World Cup?
First of all, thank you for hosting us here.
You're welcome.
We're really honored and privileged to be the first ambassadors with my counterpart in France to inaugurate this series. I will start talking about France first. I think that France, like the last few World Cup, is among the favorites. France is a fantastic, I would say, factory to generate talents. He spoke about the life of Platini, Alain Giresse. We knew Zinedine Zidane, Patrick Vieira. We knew Zinedine Zidane, Patrick Vieira, and now the generation of Kylian Mbappe. So they have all it takes to win this World Cup. Côte d'Ivoire, so far we have not made it out of the group stages, but we are hopeful we can make it. Morocco gave a fantastic example. We have what it takes. You know, we are like France. Most of our talented are, let's say, come from France academies, and we have a good generation and a young generation we're building up, and we sure that we have what it takes today, talent and everything to win the World Cup, to go very far like Morocco, and even to win it.
So we'll see that. Wish you the very best for the national team. Question about your personal relationship with the World Cup, because this is a legendary competition. What is your best memory of the World Cup? What does it mean for you, Ambassador Billy, personally and more professionally? What will be your role during this competition?
Well, on the souvenir, I think there is nothing like the '98 World Cup. That was the first one. So,
We were there,
but
yes.
I was in Turkey. We start to watch the game with a few friends, and we end up with more than 60 friends in my dining room. So it was quite tight, you can imagine. I still remember that my British colleague at that time chose to come to see the first half in my home, and went to the Brazilians for the second half. That was a poor choice. But aside that, it was also a moment of so much national unity, pride, joy. I think it's related to the African Cup of the Nations for Côte d'Ivoire. It's really a moment of national unity, which is amazing. Starting from that experience in my different posts, I've been trying to use this moment to have some gathering of French people, to create bonds with other countries around the game in a very sport and friendly manners, not a stupid nationalist pride ego competition, but something of unity. And I plan to do the same this year in the US, create bond also with, of course, our host country. So that's a very good opportunity.
Exactly. I do remember too how all the country was united behind the national team, reflecting the state.
Zizou.
Exactly, the legend. Ambassador, last year I remember at the Embassy of Côte d'Ivoire, you organized a ceremony in presence of the Minister of Sports of Côte d'Ivoire with the cup. You brought the trophy in your embassy and organized a wonderful gathering around the trophy. That means a lot to you. So what is your best memory of the World Cup? I'm sure you are a passionate of football.
Yeah,
soccer.
I'm a passionate of football, definitely. For every Ivorian of my generation, we've had very good memories of our participations in different World Cups. This is going to be our third one. But I think for many Ivorian, the 2006 World Cup will resonate, has a particular resonance. 2006 was the decades of political and social crisis in Côte d'Ivoire. The country was torn apart, division, misunderstanding, and that fantastic generation of Ivorian players, we call the golden generation, led by Didier Drogba, our national icon. They made it for the first time ever in our history to the World Cup. And I still have that image where Didier Drogba invited all his teammates to kneel, invited the coaching staff to kneel, raised their fingers toward the sky, and said, and call for national unity. And from that day up to now, that message has been prevailing in Côte d'Ivoire. We have come to realize that when we are united for the same cause, we can be very powerful. We can overcome many challenges. So that will remain, for me, one of the best memories of our World Cup history.
And Didier Drogba is still the icon you just described, and still icon. Resonates in the country.
He is the icon. He is the one still nurturing generation of Ivorian. Every single young Ivorian from the very early age dreams to be Didier Drogba. He is our national icon.
With his foundation, actually.
With his foundation. And Didier Drogba and the golden generation have been instrumental now in boosting sport. Today in Côte d'Ivoire, we have around 60,000 certified, les licenciés. We are around 80 academies across the country. And among those 80 academies, we have like 15 to 20, which are well structured, well organized, and they have partnership with let's say academies in France, Spain, Italy.
On that one, maybe I should say that I'm not such a fan of 2006 for some reason that some may remember about some unfortunate event. But I'm a big fan of Didier Drogba, and I think he inspires also a lot of people. If you speak about Côte d'Ivoire football, a lot of French people will say Didier Drogba is such an icon.
And you can be proud of him because Didier Drogba arrived in France when he was 5 years old. So he learned football in France, played for Genga, Marseille, then went to Chelsea to become who he is.
Oh, yes. And he also landed in the Atlantic Council because we hosted him 2 years ago in one of our events. So we are in the United States, the country, along with Mexico and Canada, will organize the World Cup. The United States is entering into a decade of mega sports events. It starts with the World Cup, the football this year, and also the Los Angeles Olympic Games, the Salt Lake City Winter Olympic Games. So it's literally 10, 15 years of mega sports events. So Ambassador Billy, Paris successfully organized the Paris Olympic Games last summer. So where do you see the opportunities for deeper sports partnerships and beyond with the United States in this context?
First, I would like to make a complaint.
Oh.
Because you didn't mention the World Cup of Rugby, I think.
You're right.
And for full disclosure, I'm more a rugby fan than a very specialist in soccer.
Yes.
But that tribal element apart, I think we already started to have a lot of exchanges on some aspect. One being the security of big event, which is key in this moment. But also in the last few years, we had some trade mission and some meeting, including in DC with a group of companies which are involved in sport. When we speak about sport, sometimes we underestimate the range of activities that are addressed. It goes from feeding thousands of people to connect them, to make them secure, to build the installation, the ticketing, and in all that we have developed quite an experience. I was also ambassador during the Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro, and we had French companies involved that helps us also to be successful in Paris. So yes, that's a key. One of the key activity that we are doing is to try to pass the baton to Los Angeles, and after it will be to Salt Lake City.
And Karen Bass mayor of Los Angeles, was in Paris for the transition from Paris to Los Angeles at the final ceremony. So, and what about Côte d'Ivoire? The relations between Côte d'Ivoire and the United States, how do you assess this relationship in sports, but also beyond?
I think when it comes to global sport events, the United States has always been the place to be. They have proven expertise, like France, in organizing global events. France proved it during the 2024 Olympic Games, perfectly organizing. By the way, credit to France for that. So we see it as an opportunity to take the cooperation between Côte d'Ivoire and France to another step, to another level. We have to be frank, for the time being, the cooperation has mainly been economic, political and diplomatic, trade, but I think it gives us the opportunity to explore other avenues of cooperation. We have many young, talented Ivorian playing in the NCAA. I think around 15 are doing track and field consistently. Around 20 are doing NCAA basketball. So we have what we call in French un vivier de compétences, a pool of young, talented Ivorian. And I think we need to find a way, seize the opportunity of this decade of sport, World Cup and Olympic, to engage them, because they can be the future of Ivorian sports. So it is an opportunity for us to strengthen state-to-state sport cooperation, but also university to universities cooperation, because those talents here are in universities, and we know that the US has a proven track record and expertise in developing university sport. So it's an opportunity for us.
And so many athletes from both of your countries play in the United States. We're talking about last week on this very stage with Kim Stone, CEO of Washington Spirit Women's Soccer, and Rosamond Kwasi from Côte d'Ivoire plays in Washington Spirit. Victor Wembayama, NBA, and others playing in the United States. Well, the list is very long, not to mention those who are trained here. So I have a question for both of you, because you organized two big events, the Cannes in 2023 in Côte d'Ivoire and the Olympic Games in Paris in last year. So there are some people who always blame countries or host cities for hosting these kind of global events, mentioning or pointing the finger at the cost of this global event. Why are we doing this? We should put the money maybe in hospital system or in education. Ambassador Billy, what are the returns, economically speaking? What returns did France get from the organization of the Olympic Games in Paris?
I think the critique is also real, that maybe in the past we have been a bit too enthusiastic about the spending, and we remember that Greece suffered a great deal after the Olympics. Rio de Janeiro legacy was not as easy as it was supposed to be, and from the very beginning also the Paris project was seen as a more reasonable, more tailored, I would say. So that's one part, that we didn't want things to be over-budgeted. And then it's really about working on the legacy and the objective, on the social transformation. We did a project that was green. We cut the emission by half. We make sure that it will favor some neighborhood in the northern part of Paris, especially, that were a bit left behind. And it was also an occasion to invest on infrastructure to prepare to the game.
In terms of job creation?
Job creation as well, but I'm also thinking about the 8,000 sport facilities that were renovated, about the transmission, that we have 3.5 million more sport practitioners after the game than before. Some of these facilities, we create very few new facilities, but some are functioning now for the local teams, the population.
And not only in Paris, but also in all the region.
The 8,000 that I'm mentioning, it's all in France, because if you remember, we had surf in Tahiti, we had sailing in Marseille, so that was a great Paris, the greater Paris we have never seen us. I think such a 10,000 miles, I think, until Tahiti. And not to mention the 7 billions that were added to the Paris area GDP during the game. So it has been massive. And I think it was one of the most cost-effective investment that has been done in the recent years.
Ambassador Touré, African countries have not yet been able to host, except South Africa maybe, major global events. You organized the Soccer Continental Cup, FIFA. What lessons do you learn from the organization of this competition the United States could learn from Côte d'Ivoire in terms of experience of organizing such an event?
I think, as far as Côte d'Ivoire is concerned, we haven't experienced any controversy regarding the amount of money that was invested in the organization of the Africa Cup of Nations. The government invested more than $1 billion in building new stadiums, restoring roads, building new road infrastructures, training ground across the country, hotels. So the gains, the non-financial gains of the Africa Cup of Nations are still visible in Côte d'Ivoire. Anyone who visited Abidjan over the last few years or the months, or went through beyond Abidjan to go inside the country, can see the tremendous transformation that is going on. And I think the Africa Cup of Nations accelerated that transformation. That said, in terms of what the gains, I will say that apart from the sports gain itself, the gains were, I will say, moral and at the mindset. You know how we won that cup. It was really difficult at the end. We nearly got kicked out of our own Africa Cup of Nations. That would have been a national disaster. But we managed, and I'll say again, thanks to Morocco, who won their match, we managed to come out of the group stage, had that fantastic run up to the final to win it. So this victory has a particular resonance right now in Côte d'Ivoire. It has triggered a winning mentality. You can see it everywhere. We have our sense of humor, and we developed that in Côte d'Ivoire. We said, it's our Africa Cup of Nations. We organize it when we want it. We can lose it if you want. We can win it if you want. So there is this kind of sense of humor that is still prevailing in Côte d'Ivoire. But the biggest gain is the winning mindset that it created in Côte d'Ivoire now, and that I think will prevail for generation and generation to come.
An impact beyond business, and you mentioned the government investments in the competition in terms of infrastructure, the private sector also, because I want to build the case of the business opportunities through this kind of competition. The private sector too was involved through sponsorship or things like that, and French companies sponsored the CAN in Côte d'Ivoire, like Total or Orange. Ambassador Billy, how do you see the partnership in sports diplomacy between France and African countries? Because there is a very innovative sports policy from France to Africa.
Yeah. Since I think more or less 10 years now, and I think it was also linked with the election of George Weah. There were a kind of understanding that sport could be an innovative way to cooperate. And when I was in the board of Agence Française de Développement, we had the first project, and one of I think the most iconic one was in Koumoussi in Ivory Coast. And it was the idea that sport is of course good for social cohesion, to give a sense of purpose. What you just said about we can win, I think it's really important to give that direction, but also to create a kind of ecosystem around sport facilities with place where people can meet. That's the reason they call that agora. And since then there is 90 agoras. There is this cluster to allow some startup to have a place to start to thrive. And I think it has been quite a change of mentality, but a good program. I think it was founded around 230 million in the last years, to have this push on sport, but sport as a trigger for development, for motivation, for skills. And I think it has been a good move, and I'm proud to have been modestly part of that journey.
Contributed to that. Ambassador Toure, we know how passionate the Ivorian youth is, and even the less young people, with football and soccer. Many would like to play, to become professional. How do you see the needs of the sports ecosystem? What are your expectations in terms of partnership? What kind of contribution international partners could provide to support Côte d'Ivoire in its efforts to make sports thrive for the benefits of the population?
Ambassador, we have what we call le Plan National de Développement, the National Development Plan. And within this National Development Plan, you have the PNS, the Programme National des Sports. And the Plan National de Développement is expected to be funded 25% by public fund and 75% by private sector. So it is exactly the same with the Programme National des Sports. So the overwhelming part of the funding we'll be looking for the next five years is expecting to come from the private sector, which means that state partners like France and the France private sector and the Ivorian private sector, even the US and the international private sector will have let's say, their share of I would say, financial responsibility in implementing that project. What we want to do, and we've seen it with President Ouattara over the last 15 years, to increase the education infrastructure offer by building high schools. Over the last 15 years, around 700 high schools have been built across the country. 24 world-class sports training grounds. All this is expected to be increased over the next few years. So apart from sport and education, we want to use sport as a way to foster development. And also, like Ambassador Laurent Billy was saying, there's a whole ecosystem of sport now. So goes from training our coaches, which France is really helping with its expertise, training our coaches, sport medicine, our physiotherapists, and also what we call sport industry. You're talking about the medias, you're talking about the infrastructure managers.
Tourism,
yeah. Tourism. You're also talking about event organizers. France has proven its capacity. We rely on not only our national capabilities, but also on the international expertise to help us develop those three layers of our national sports policy. I mean, education in sport, economic development around sport, and sports industry, the whole ecosystem.
I have a question from this is a tough question and resonates with the it is supposed to be on the screen, but I don't know how it works. But as countries, maybe for you, Ambassador Billy, as countries prepare to host, it's from the public, major global sporting events such as the 2026 FIFA World Cup, how do you see the role of international cooperation in preventing and responding to terrorism risk linked to large-scale sports? France has suffered from those kind of risks during years.
Well, there is a huge organization that has to be put in place to make sure that we gather, share information in a timely manner. And so I think in Paris we did a great job, but it's also a process that has been built through different organizations. I remember that in Rio we had people in kind of HQ from the Brazilian, and we are going to have liaison officer also during the game in the US and the World Cup. So I think it's really about cooperation, and for really the strictly security part. And I think after it's also that kind of messaging. Sport should be immune of this kind of sad madness.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. Sports brings people together, unite people, etc. But sports sometimes can be the reflection of politics and diplomatic crisis and geopolitical crisis. For you, Ambassador Touré, what is your personal opinion? Should sports be the reflection of those kind of crises, or should sport just be about fun and entertainment? What is your opinion about that?
I think sports should mainly be about entertainment, unity, brotherhood. So using sports for political reason can lead up to some unfortunately dramatic event that we've seen across history. For Côte d'Ivoire, we have that our national motto, which is La Côte d'Ivoire, l'ami de tous et l'ennemi de personne. We are the friend of everyone and enemies of no one. So that we also see in our sport. That's why you can see whenever we organize a sports event or we take part in a sport event beyond our borders, you can see the type of spirit that we bring in, mainly putting an emphasis on the fans side of sport, the uniting side of sport. That's I think what sports should be about.
What about coming back to business? What role should and precisely the need of unity you just mentioned, what role should international cooperation play in shaping the future of global sports, particularly in terms of governance, integrity, sustainability? Because sports is also about representation. How do you see African countries being represented in international governance, whether it's FIFA or the International Committee? You know, we always talk about African representation at the Security Council of the United Nations, but what about international governance?
As far as international governance is concerned, we have to recognize that progress has been made in improving Africa representation in sports governing bodies, be it at the Olympic level, being World Cup and other governing body. Progress have been made, but we think that there's room for improvement to reflect what Africa represents today in the global scene. Sport is by nature collective. You know, some would say boxing is an individual, but to be a boxer, you have to have a training staff around you. So it's by nature collective, and it is because sport is collective that we face the same opportunities together, and we face the same challenges together. And there's no better way to find lasting, mutually profitable, consensual solution to the challenges that we are facing than to foster cooperation at state level, but also at institutional level. So I think it is important not only to improve the credibility of the governing bodies like FIFA, like le Comité Olympique International, and it's also a way to improve trust, public trust, because recent scandal surrounding dopings and match fixing have a bit tarnished, you know, the reputation of some of the sports. So I think coming together to discuss and set up consensual rules will further improve the credibility of sport and the involvement of people at global level.
Please, in the public, in-person public, if you are interested in asking questions to the ambassadors here, let us know. We have 10 minutes before the end of this conversation. In the meantime, I would like to continue in that vein, Ambassador Billy, and ask you about this geopolitical crisis reflected in sports. A few weeks ago, President Infantino mentioned that Russian players should be allowed to play. We also heard about Iranians who said they don't want or can't attend the Kennedy Center draw a few weeks ago. How do you see, what is France's opinion about this kind of countries, like from Russia to Iran, the way they react to the international competition? What FIFA or the International Committee, Olympic Committee should do with these countries? What is France's position about them? Should they be included or should they be excluded from the competition? What's your opinion?
Well, first I would like to echo Ambassador Ibrahim Touré in saying that despite the progress, we still have to work for better world representation in sport instances, and in particular football. Your question is bringing us back from, I think, the very origin of the Olympics. When Pierre de Coubertin wanted to revive the game, it was the idea of, in a turbulent Europe especially, to have that moment of truce where weapons will be silent, and a moment of unity, and put politics aside, rivalry aside. At the same time, when we look at history, we all remember the 1936 Berlin game. That was somehow we close our eyes on something that was already obvious. And I think from that lessons, there is that continuing debate on should sport be completely immune when the worst is happening. And so all countries have different moments, make different choices. I remember the game in Moscow after the invasion of Afghanistan. The return of the war in Europe with the aggression of Russia and against Ukraine has bring us more in the side that some things shouldn't consider as normal. Again, the world community is not completely anonymous on that, but there is that feeling, and I think I still see that for people that are under the bomb in Ukraine, to see a Russian flag and a Russian team playing like if life is normal, it's quite insulting. But I can understand the vision and the idea that sport should be immune from that, but sometimes it's difficult to be out of it.
Exactly. I think I'm going to the public now. Would you like to take the risk to be asked a question from the public? Ambassadors? Okay. Please. Barbara.
Good morning. I'm Barbara Simmons. This is really enjoyable. I wanted to ask Ambassador Touré, you said that 75% of the funding would be coming from other than the government. In terms of the African diaspora, is any thought being given, not just in terms of contributing funds, but the expertise around sports being a part of the plan in terms of contributing?
Yes. When we say 75% investment, it's financial, but also it's through non-financial channels. Over the last few years, since I've been ambassadors here, I came to realize the tremendous potential of our diaspora and also the African diaspora. And that is why our role in the building process of the World Cup, the forthcoming World Cup, and even after, would be to engage the diaspora, primarily the Ivorian, the African diaspora, and see how they can contribute to developing sports and funding sport in our country. Since I think yesterday, I've been in contact with one of our prominent sport figure, Marie-Josée Talou, who has been designated as vice president of the Ivorian Track and Field Federation, in charge of detecting and channeling talents toward Cote d'Ivoire to build a new generation of Ivorian track and field stars. So the embassy and I will be coordinating with her and through the diaspora to make sure that we identify and channel those talents. But overall, it means that when we say private sector, it also involves the African diaspora in general, but the Ivorian diaspora in particular.
Thank you, Ambassador. Another question here, please.
Ambassadors, how do you expect to advise your citizens, the supporters of your national teams, on U.S. immigration policy in advance of the games, accessing visas and et cetera?
Ambassador Billy?
Well, basically, what we will advise is to really respect the rules. It means that if you are a tourist, you can come with an ESTA, but if you plan to have some kind of other activities, you have to get the right visa because the rules are strict. There is an ongoing debate on some change on the ESTA regarding the ability of the border officers to check on social networks. I think that kind of things could have a very negative effect on the willingness of people to come. And so I think it's under reflection, but I think the reflection should take into account the gain in terms of security and the loss in terms of tourism, business opportunity, because that's kind of strange seen from a French point of view.
I see a few representatives of the State Department in this room. Feel free, Lillian. Please go ahead. There's a question. Yes, please.
Hi, je vous remercie, Excellence. My name is Manar. I'm a graduate student at George Mason University, currently writing my thesis on soft power strategy and sports diplomacy in Saudi Arabia, where I come from, and where sports has become very prominent. My question is about the international events and major events. They bring people together over the shared love of sports, but they also expose them to different cultures and they learn about each other's traditions. My question is, how do you sustain this connection and so the impact will go beyond the symbolic moment of the event? Thank you.
Their questions are better than mine. Saudi Arabia will organize the next World Cup after Morocco 2030 and then 2034. So, yes, who want to take that question?
Want to go first? No? So I think when we organize this kind of major event, you have to think about what you want to showcase. And it's interesting to compare that in, as I said, I'm a rugby fan, that the World Rugby Cup in France had different messaging that the game. Somehow the choice for rugby was more to sell a kind of traditional France and a kind of even so traditional that you will have seen some of the clichés about the baguette, the beret, and it was kind of fun, but it was a choice. When the Olympics have been more trying to build on creativity, innovation, and to surprise the world with the parade on the river, on the La Seine, and also all that investment about a country that is cleaning its river, that is having less emission. So so you have different way to sell a destination. Both are working in a way. But it's a kind of political choice at a certain moment, and also by the sport organization. We probably had less tourists in Paris during the games that we anticipated, but we saw just after that it was also a world campaign, and that it has a lasting impact on the number of visitors in Paris, in some of those areas that hosted the games in France.
Thank you, Ambassador.
When we started planning for the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations, we had many things in mind. First of all, Côte d'Ivoire has around 26% of its population. 26% are foreigners. I think it's one of the biggest percentage in the world. It's almost a quarter of the population are foreigners, mainly coming from neighboring countries, but from Africa, Asia, Europe. So it's a kind of melting pot, and we wanted that to be reflected in our Africa Cup of Nations. That's why we called it l'hospitalité, the kind of hospitality, and that was seen during all the tournaments. So it's part of our strategy to become a sports hub in the region, and we have, let's say, done that not only through infrastructure, but also through cultural events. It is very important. The music, the culture of Côte d'Ivoire right now is kind of nourished by external influence. So the Africa Cup of Nations was an opportunity for us to put an emphasis on that side of our influence, because we want to become a sports hub not only on the region of Africa, but also across the globe. And if you talk about Côte d'Ivoire today, most of them, people will talk about football, but they'll also talk about music and cuisine. And the Africa Cup of Nations succeeded in showcasing that asset that we have.
We have a voice from Texas, Denise Kirkpatrick, who is a former State Department ambassador of the U.S. to Guinea-Bissau. She's now the CEO and president of the Texan Education International Consortium. So she's asking, greeting ambassadors, do you believe institutions of higher education can play a role in building the sports industry and expertise across borders? If yes, how do you envision higher education international partnerships being integrated in this process? Ambassador Billy?
Well, I think Ambassador Touré just mentioned that we have so many cooperation between federation and, for the coach, for the referees, for the formation of young people. And so that has been part of these last 10 years movement, probably even more ancient, but it has been structured in the last 10 years. Before it was more because some players had knew someone and then we were back to the country, they wanted to bring some expertise. Now it has been much more institutionalized, and clearly that's part of an education system. If you want to do things professionally, you have to have a global view about sports. It includes, as Ambassador Touré mentioned, also the physicians. There is even now some programs to follow the players. Informatic program to follow some of the markers of the players, to see who is at his best and who need recuperation. So it's really something that need training, expertise, and it opens a lot of avenues for cooperation.
I think I saw this, then I will come back to you.
Hello, thank you for today. This has been wonderful. My name is Helena Tadessa, independent development consultant with a particular passion for engaging the African diaspora. My question is in particular to Ambassador Laurent. Given that a significant portion of the sports players for France are of African descent, I'm curious what the current engagement and contribution is to across Africa. So whether it's partnerships or donating or other ways of engagement, I'd love to hear what's currently happening and what you envision happening for the future.
Most of the athletes that you are mentioning were born in France and raised in France, but it certainly creates a natural bond, which is also an historical bond between France and many countries in Africa. And so that's really, on the last 10 years on sport especially, our Agence Française de Développement has been really focusing on the sport as a trigger for development. And using also these figures, you may think of a lot of them in French history. I'm thinking about Yannick Noah fathers in Cameroon, and famous tennisman. If you don't know, for us, it's still an icon. So it has been a journey, but I think the journey is becoming more professional, more organized. But maybe, Ambassador, you might.
Yeah, you're fully right, Ambassador. Years ago, this was the cooperation, if we can call it that way, was mainly through individual initiatives. But now it's more and more structured. The majority of the football academies, for example, that you see in Côte d'Ivoire, have been created, funded, and managed by former professional football players or active football players, the like of Gervinho and Bonaventure Kalou. They've created their sports academy, and even Franck Kessié. And these are the ones who, in a very structured and more organized, more professional, as Ambassador Laurent Billy was saying, who are now pushing our sports academy to the level of countries like France. And I will say, to go further, talking about how those representatives of our diaspora come to contribute to the development of our sports, I will say that at a certain stage of their career, some of these youngsters choose to come back to Côte d'Ivoire or to their countries of origin to defend our colors. Yesterday, I was really pleased to see that Eli Wahi went to the Ivorian consulate to apply for his passport. He's a tremendous asset, and I think if he's selected for the World Cup, he can be he can make the difference. So there are many Ivorians like that in football, in track and field, in basketball, who are coming back to defend the colors of the origins
of the country.
of the country.
And one last question, please.
Hi, I used to be a sports broadcaster at ESPN, now in the policy world, so combining my love of soft power and diplomacy. I think the brilliance about the World Cup, apart from being a global showcase and combining the soft power element that Joe Nye famously codified, is it's such a thing for the global south, because it's the one time where you see the economic asymmetry sort of being equalized, because you have 11 on 11, and it's such a powerful feeling when you see Senegal beating France, or Cameroon beating Argentina, and Morocco's meteoric rise. I'm just curious from a global south perspective, how do you see that? Do you see that despite the asymmetry of sporting infrastructure, the World Cup is such a powerful force for the global south together, and it brings future investments and grows the whole aspect of sports cultural diplomacy as well?
Good opportunity for your final words, Ambassador Billy.
Well, it's not such a good feeling to be beaten, but it's still better to be beaten by a friend.
On that note, Ambassador Touré.
The closing?
Yeah, the closing.
Ambassador, really thank you so very much for the opportunity that you're giving us to talk about the forthcoming World Cup, country's policy. And on a personal basis, I would like to thank you for what you are doing as director of the Africa Center of the Atlantic Council. Most African ambassadors have always benefited from the key that you hold today to open the Atlantic Council for us to come and not only take part as participants in your different initiatives, but also be able today to talk about to talk to the public and those we do not see today. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
If you allow me, I would like to give Monsieur Yosa, please.
Oh, you have a gift? For who? for oh, it looked like from Côte d'Ivoire. Huh?
You and Ambassador Laurent Billy.
Huh?
This is
What our countries will say. I mean,
Ambassador. This is yours.
I think it's the opposite.
Oh, it's the opposite.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is yours. This is mine. Let me see. Wow. Okay. Ambassador, I don't know if you would be able to go back to your country if you wear this, but.
No, we have to cheer for Côte d'Ivoire because this is going to be collector and very valuable.
Exactly. If you win, I mean, we'll make a lot of money with it. Right? Okay, so thank you very much, Ambassador.
Merci.
It's wonderful. So I don't know how to wrap up, but on this wonderful note, thank you, Ambassador Billy, Ambassador Touré, for accepting to inaugurate this embassy series, the Power of Sports Embassy Dialogues. I hope you enjoyed it. What strikes me the most in this conversation is how by talking about sport, how we know more about your countries, much more, at the best. So this is what sports is about. It's about national identity, national ambition, and also partnership, because we could feel through your dialogue that France and Côte d'Ivoire are really close and friends to each other. So thank you, ambassadors, for that. We will organize this kind of fireside chat with qualified countries. We are thinking of a UK-Ghana conversation. Maybe a discussion between the ambassador of Algeria and Argentina. That would be very interesting to monitor this until we reach June. So thank you, Ambassador Billy. It was a pleasure to have France on this stage under the Africa Center. It was an old dream to have you on this stage with the Africa Center. So thank you for that. Ambassador Touré, we dialogue every day. So we'll continue that friendly dialogue. It's an honor to have you as a friend of the Africa Center too. And thank you very much for making the time and watching this innovative series. And we hope to see you again. Thank you.